All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. An amazing show ahead. Tons of interesting topics, including former Fox executives pleading for mercy, saying, please forgive us for what we've done, because this is abhorrent. So that is an amazing story among many others. But we start with kind of breaking news.
We do, so let's get right to it.
Nobody wants a work stoppage, but if our leadership is saying that the deal isn't fair, then we gotta hold strong till we get a deal that's fair for working actors. It's the difference between having health care and not for a lot of actors, and we got to do what's right by them.
That was Matt Damon at the world premiere of Oppenheimer, and shortly after that comment, he and his fellow cast members actually walked off of their own premiere, because a deal has not been reached by the union representing the actors and the studios, and as a result, the strike is on. About 150,000 actors will be on strike beginning midnight, and it's because they have not reached a deal with the AMPTP, which of course represents the major Hollywood studios. So I want to give you guys some details on what this means. First of all, it has been decades since this type of strike has taken place among the actors. It's been over 40 years since the actors walked off on strike, and it's been over 60 years since the actors and writers were both on strike at the same time. In fact, in 1960, this is just a fun fact, when the actors and writers last went on strike together, the president of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, was Ronald Reagan. But here is what the president for SAG, Fran Drescher, said of the unsuccessful negotiations.
I cannot believe it, quite frankly, how far apart we are on so many things. How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them. They stand on the wrong side of history at this very moment. You cannot keep being dwindled and marginalized and disrespected and dishonored. The entire business model has been changed by streaming, digital, AI. This is a moment of history that is a moment of truth. If we don't stand tall right now, we are all going to be in trouble. We are all going to be in jeopardy of being replaced by machines and big business. Who cares more about Wall Street than you and your family? Most of Americans don't have more than $500 in an emergency.
And those are some powerful statements. In fact, the entire press conference is up online, and I highly recommend you all watch it, because you'll notice a lot of similarities between the workers who have complained in other contexts before and what the representatives over at the Screen Actors Guild are saying about the precarious nature of acting these days, and what the job has kind of turned into, how much the job has changed with streaming and with AI, and how, during these contract negotiations, what really stood out to her was how they want to just keep going along as if things haven't changed. They want to negotiate the same way, they want to pretend as if the industry hasn't changed, and that obviously puts the workers, the actors in this case, at a significant disadvantage. So the two sticking points, and we've talked about this before, include wages, and also, ensuring that there are safeguards in place to protect jobs as the AI technology continues to advance and continues to kind of infiltrate this industry. Now, the exact details of the negotiations and why they broke down are not fully known yet. Meanwhile, the studios insist that they have offered their best provisions given the state of their finances. I'll give you the details on what they claim and show you some of the pay for top executives in just a moment. But before I do, Cenk, I wanted to open it up to you.
Yeah, so a couple of small points first. Fran Drescher was criticized for being too soft before in these negotiations, so she kind of had to give a fiery speech, and she did. And she gave a good fiery speech, so I think that probably shores up her standing a little bit with her own members. That's good, smart thinking and optics and marketing. Let's keep it real, but that stuff is important because to some degree they're trying to win over public opinion, which then leads to the Oppenheimer walkout, which was kind of brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they moved up the premiere by an hour to make sure that the stars could walk the red carpet. But then they waited for the stars to walk out and then declared the strike because the stars wanted to walk out during the movie and not be there for afterwards when they normally would have been to answer questions in that context, right? And what did that do? It created everyone talking about the Oppenheimer walkout, which is good, smart thinking when you're trying to win over public opinion. Oh, Robert Downey Jr., oh my God, all these famous people, I know those guys. Oh, what are they complaining about? Oh, we showed you the clip from Matt Damon. Turns out, not everyone is rich and famous like Matt Damon and Robert Downey Jr. Turns out a lot of them just need health care because they're working actors and it's really, really hard.
Right.
That's how you do it. There is a way to win on these things.
Remember, look, the Screen Actors Guild represents more than 150,000 actors. And I think this is a common misconception all across the country. When you hear actor, you think of people like Matt Damon. You think of people who are big names in the industry. But the vast majority of actors and actresses actually happen to be people who work in the restaurant industry just to make ends meet and hope for gigs that they audition for. And they love the craft, but they're not super wealthy off of the acting they do. There are very few actors who actually make it big time and rake in tens of millions of dollars. Now, with that said, I do want to get to the reaction from the studios. So AMPTP said the studios offered the union the highest percentage increase in guild minimums in 35 years and substantial increases in pension and healthcare contribution caps, among other proposals. Now, that's pretty vague and we don't know the specifics, but here's something that really did stand out to me. And it was something that a friend of mine had kind of warned me about prior to this being confirmed, but now it seems to be confirmed. The way they want to use AI in the industry. So let's go to this tweet. The studio's AI proposal to SAG-AFTRA included scanning a background actor's likeness for 1 day's worth of pay and then using their likeness forever in any form without any pay or consent. Meaning they get that one-time payment and then it's gone, it's over, right? They can then use that actor's or actress's likeness forever without ever having to pay that individual again. And let's also go to how some of the other executives have responded to this. So the Disney CEO, Bob Iger, gave a pretty harsh critique of SAG and the WGA today on CNBC specifically. Iger said, the labor situation is very disturbing to me. Coming after the ravages of COVID, he continued, this is the worst time in the world to be adding to that disruption. I understand any labor organization's desire to have its members to be compensated fairly based on the work that they deliver. Okay, and then CNBC's David Faber said the conclusion to be drawn from Iger's comments was that the guilds are not being very realistic. Iger responded, no, they're not. And maybe we should consider Bob Iger's salary a little unrealistic, given the complaints that we're hearing from the Guild right now. Iger collected $65 million from Disney in 2018 alone, which is 1,424 times the company's median employee salary. Forbes placed Iger's net worth at around $690 million in 2019. He retired in 2020, but returned to Disney's helm in 2022 for a cool target annual salary of $27 million with all bonuses. On Wednesday, he signed a contract extension that grants him $4 million more in possible bonuses, bringing the annual target to $31 million. So look, I give you that information because it shows you the disconnect and the incredible wealth that blinds him to the reality that the vast majority of actors here are facing, especially with the advancement of AI technology.
Yeah, so look, guys, I get why Iger's salary is so high. From a business perspective, he drove the Disney stock price way up. He takes a certain percentage of it. It happens with a lot of executives. Having said that, you don't get to say that your actors and writers are making too much when some of them can't even pay for health insurance and then pay yourself that kind of salary. So you can have one or the other. Pay yourself that kind of salary and pay all the actors and the writers, etc. No problem, okay? Everybody's boat is rising, okay, I'm good with it. But you can't say I don't have money and then you paid yourself all that money. Look, let's put up the last 5 years' salaries for the different executives, and these numbers are eye-popping. They're out of control. David Zaslav, the guy who earned it the least, I'll tell you why in a second, nearly, what is that? Jesus, $498 million over the last 5 years.
Yeah, yep.
That is $500 million for a guy who didn't create anything.
But guys, what could he do? I mean, what could these executives do? I mean, they're living in poverty. They can't afford to pay more.
Yeah, well, so let's keep going real quick. Ari Emanuel is a giant agent, but probably top agent in Hollywood. Okay, $347 million. Reed Hastings from Netflix, $209 million. Bob Iger, $195 million. Sarandos from Netflix, $192 million. And Murdoch, of course, owns Fox Corp, $175 million over the last 5 years. Okay, so those are monster numbers. Look, I just gotta say, Murdoch, you might hate him, Iger, Hastings, Sarandos, but they've done some amazing things in their careers. Zaslav's just like a rando middle manager who wound up having good political skills inside a company and getting to the top. He barely created anything at all. So these guys just siphon off all of the money, right? And then go, well, of course there's no money left. That's because I paid myself $500 million. That is not convincing, not 1% convincing. So, okay, now the last part of this is super important. The writers have been on strike for quite a while, and now the actors have joined them. But basically the rumor, it's not even really so much rumor as discussions in Hollywood about strategy, is that people think that the studios are gonna hold out on the writers all the way through October, and they're gonna try to, quote, bleed them out.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was an executive who, of course, didn't have the courage to say this with their identity open to the public, but this individual gave an anonymous quote. I wanna read it to you, read it for you right now. So, the end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses, a studio executive told Deadline. Acknowledging the cold as ice approach, several other sources reiterated the statement. One insider called it a cruel but necessary evil.
No, not necessary. And so what the actors are going to do is super important. Because if they get a mid offer, obviously the negotiations are going to continue. They can't do anything without the actors. They can go for a while without the writers with like crappy scripts and bad stuff and reality shows and stuff like that, game shows. Even then you'd need writers, but they can patch it together, right? But without actors, you can't do a movie, you can't do a TV show. So if the actors hold out and go, no, we're with the writers and we're gonna stick with the writers, then the studios make the wrong gamble and they're gonna get hurt. And eventually they're gonna get hurt bad enough that the stock price is gonna start to go down, and then they're gonna start to panic about what? Their own bonuses, okay?
Most important thing in the world, Cenk.
Exactly, the minute Zaslav starts to panic about his bonus is the minute the writers have a shot at this, okay? So the actors have now joined the writers, so the writers have a fighter's chance.
Yeah.
But if the actors make a deal and the writers haven't, the writers are in a world of trouble, and that's just the reality of it.
Well, you can help support, SAG and the striking actors. I reached out to my friend to see if there's any way to help, and so she provided a list of things that could be helpful. I want to read them to you right now. You can join the picket line. You can donate supplies. That includes food, ordering pizzas, publicly show support, and you can also purchase official SAG-AFTRA merchandise. The other thing I wanted to just quickly point out is that there is a website that you can contribute to. It's basically like a strike fund, and that's SAG-AFTRA.org. And my friend also sent me entertainmentcommunity.org as a website you can go to also contribute and help support them through the strike. And I think you're right, Cenk. I think that analysis is spot on. I think the solidarity that the actors are showing with the writers is super important. It does help to uplift the striking writers. I really hope they don't concede and agree to a crappy contract. Let's just put it that way.
And I'll give you one last example here. So just because I happen to be in media and just randomly too, I happen to know a bunch of actors, right? A friend of mine who's a good friend who, we knew each other when we were both struggling is Dollar Bill from Billions, right? So Kelly Coyne, and he's in The Americans. He's a great actor. And so I give you him as an example because and sorry, Kelly, I didn't ask your permission. So he struggled for a long time, right? And not struggling in a bad way. He's doing Broadway, he's doing plays, he's an actor, he's a working actor. But in terms of money, he was hurt, dog, and I was hurt, and we were hurt together, right? So now he's doing all right. Now he's not Matt Damon or anything. Sorry again, Kelly. Okay.
Jesus.
He's gotta be, okay.
What does it feel like under that bus?
I know, seriously, he's a great actor, right? But I'm just saying he doesn't have a mansion in Beverly Hills or anything like that. So, but he's okay now. He needed the help when he was coming up. And so don't forget that for every great actor you see, whether it's Matt Damon or Dollar Bill or any of these great actors that you love in your shows, in your movies, etc., that there was a giant stretch, for most of them, a long stretch, decades of barely making the bills with extra work and doing 2-3 different jobs, etc. Those are the guys we need to help in this strike. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. All right, we're gonna take a brief break for now. When we come back, there's yet more fishy financial stuff happening with Justice Clarence Thomas. And I also want to talk about Ron Johnson's statements in regard to Social Security. Gives you a sense of exactly what the Republican Party thinks about the very programs that we are entitled to because we pay into them. That and more coming up.
All right, guys, remember we have a podcasting network. Try to check that out wherever you get your podcasts. I think you'll love it. Let's go to our members on tyt.com. OJam writes in, who would have thought back in the 90s that Fran would be our champion?
I did.
Oh, you did?
I mean, I've always loved her, which is why I was really sad to see, that photo with Kim Kardashian during these negotiations where she's in Italy or whatever. Whatever, her speech was amazing. I'm water under the bridge.
Okay, yeah. All right,
She's
well, God
amazing.
bless. Why not?
I love The Nanny.
Yeah, and if you think like, oh, The Nanny, that's acting, right? She's not actually The Nanny, but you know that.
Really?
No, because it makes it seem like, oh, the person who's playing the clown, that's our leader? No, but he was acting.
No one, I don't think anyone was thinking that.
Okay, anyways. Although for the Republicans, Ronald Reagan, I think, literally did play a clown once, and they didn't seem to mind at all. Anyways, Future in Doubt says, I have a question. With the writers and actors on strike together, does that give IATSE grounds to start a civil lawsuit against the studios for lost wages and compensation? With these strikes, no behind camera crew gets paid either. I care because I'm behind the scenes person. So that's a unique argument.
Yeah.
Very unlikely to succeed, but wait a minute now. Remember all the companies that started suing the unions when they go on strike, saying, oh, I lost profits, it's your fault, I want you to give me the money. Well, why can't the unions do that?
That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah, and say, well, look, it's the studios that are not paying the appropriate compensation for these people. You guys caused the strike, and now my guys aren't getting paid, you owe me. Hey, this isn't my idea. You guys came up with this idea when you brought it to the courts and said that you should be made good on extra profits that you deserved. So, Future in Doubt, pretty interesting idea. Maybe you should take it up with leadership. Cyber Dragon Lord says there was an episode of Black Mirror about AI making a show on Streamberry, a Netflix clone, using actors' images without their consent. No, a ton of things that were in Black Mirror have already happened. And it's deeply disturbing. So it's pretty weird and dystopic times. Layman Shaman on Twitch writes in, or Shaman, that one-time payment better be like $100 million or something if they really think they can buy a person's full likeness forever.
Right.
Yeah, it is absurd to pay them once and say, I got you. It's like paying them for one role and then demanding all other roles in their rest of their career. So you're absolutely right. Designer Dragon says, I drink your milkshake all up. And that is exactly what the executives are saying now. Poodle Hat Dragon just says, spending my night at work watching, listening to my favorite host. Thank you. All right, back on TYT, Jing and Anna with you guys, and also Denise White. Denise, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. She hit the join button below the video, tyt.com/join for everybody. All right, Casper.
Well, we unfortunately have to talk about Republican Ron Johnson, so let's get to it.
Again, on the lower end of the income scale, you're getting a lot more than what you paid in. If you're in the high income, you're not getting what you paid in. And wasn't that sort of the deal? This was not a general welfare system. This wasn't, this was really designed, we're gonna make you save for your retirement and then you're gonna get back what you paid in.
During a hearing on Social Security yesterday, Republican Senator Ron Johnson asserted that the program, which serves as an economic lifeline for literally tens of millions of Americans, unfairly takes from the rich to support lower income retirees. Now, during the Protecting Social Security for All hearing, not only did Johnson essentially insinuate that his own constituents are dumb for not understanding Social Security, he seemed to attack the program overall. And I want to show you what he had to say in this next clip.
When I talk to Wisconsinites, they just have a basic misperception about Social Security. I mean, I think this was originally sold as, okay, we are going to, as a nanny state, we're going to make sure that you're gonna have money for retirement, so we're gonna extract wages from, or taxes from your wages, and we're gonna set up an account for you so that we're gonna save it for you for your retirement, because we don't trust you to save for yourself. So most people think, well, that's my money. And in fact, a part of it is. But as Senator Grassley was talking about, if you're in the low income group, you're getting a lot more in return than you ever invested in.
Senator Johnson, I would love nothing more than for you to just get out of the halls of Congress and, for God's sake, please go do a national tour touting how much Republicans want to decimate Social Security. Want to know why? Why don't we go to his state of Wisconsin and see how ordinary Americans, not tremendously wealthy Americans like Senator Johnson, how they feel about Social Security. 84% of Wisconsin voters 50 and older say they would be more likely to vote for a candidate for Senate who will protect Social Security from cuts. So look, this argument that he's making is meant to essentially set the tone for cutting Social Security, for potentially privatizing Social Security, maybe even increasing the retirement age before an individual can collect Social Security. These are the various ways in which the Republican Party has fought historically and continues to fight today to essentially dismantle a program that is incredibly popular and again serves as a lifeline for tens of millions of Americans as we speak.
So do you remember that moment when Joe Biden said they were going to cut Social Security and Medicare, or the Republicans were planning to do that, and the Republicans booed? They're like, boo, no way, that's not true. Well, you just saw it. Ron Johnson said that's exactly what we should do. He's like, oh, yeah, there's a misconception about how Social Security is good. It's not. It's a nanny state program, and they take money from your check, and then instead of giving it to me and my donors, they give it back to you with even more money on top. Wait, what? Yeah, thank you for admitting it. So now he says, oh, the poor, the rich are so poor, they give so much more than everyone else. Do they? Let's look at graphic 3. Graphic 3 shows you the percentage of your income that people put into Social Security. So the bottom 20%, they put in a little bit less, 8.4% than the average. The middle class pays up to 10.4%. They pay the biggest chunk, right? By the time you get to the richest 1%, they're paying about 3.1%. A much, much smaller percentage of their income than the poorest 20%.
And let's explain why. I mean, we've explained this on the show before, but it's really important for people to know, right? For wealthy people, they don't pay Social Security taxes on the entirety of their income. There is a cap. So let's say we're talking about someone who makes a giant salary, right? After you earn a certain amount of money each year, the federal government stops taxing you for Social Security. The vast majority of Americans never hit that cap, never surpass that cap. But the very wealthy, right, they get to a point where I forget the exact number this year, right? But it gets to a certain point in your income where you're no longer taxed for Social Security. So the way he's framing it makes it seem as though, oh, the poor are stealing from the rich, right? It's not fair. The rich are paying into the system, they're paying way more into the system, and they're getting way less in return. But they get taxed less when you consider the percentage of their income that ends up getting taxed for Social Security.
So his sophistry is, he says, well, look, basically in essence what he's saying, when you look at raw numbers, if you make $250,000 and you pay, let's make up a hypothetical here so the math is easy, 10%, you're giving $25,000. But if you're only making $25,000 a year and you give 10%, you're only paying $2,500. So the guy making 10 times as much is putting in 10 times as much in raw dollars. Yeah, that's because he's making $250,000. Now the guy's making $25,000, can barely survive.
Right.
And he still puts money in. He still puts a lot of money in, right? And so now they're saying no, above that number, which is around around that 200,000 mark. No, we don't want to pay it. But that's it. That's enough. I don't want to pay it anymore. And it's up to you guys. Now, gee, I wonder which side Ron Johnson's on.
Right.
Now, I'm going to explain the progressive position in a second. But to give you a sense of why Ron Johnson might think what he does, let's look at graphic 4. Let's see how much, which camp Ron Johnson is in. Oh, he's the 6th richest person in the Senate with an estimated net worth of over $39 million.
Guys, can you imagine, like, this is a thing that drives me crazy. Can you imagine being that wealthy and being upset about Social Security taxes?
No, it's no, and he's, so look, this is important. So he's personally wealthy, and if you have that kind of money and you still need more, there's something deeply wrong with you, right? But that's not the main issue here. The main issue is all of his donors collectively have maybe trillions of dollars on the line. And so they're all telling him, you better make sure that they don't touch our money, okay? Crush the poor and especially crush the middle class, but do not let them touch our money. And like a dog, he goes out there and goes, Social Security, who needs it, man? Remember when we were booing and saying that we wouldn't cut Social Security? We were lying. As always, we're Republicans, all we ever do is lie, lie, lie. And by the way, the leader of the Republicans in the House, Kevin McCarthy, the one who just swore up and down that they weren't gonna cut Social Security and Medicare, now he's saying, look, man, painful cuts have to be on the table. So we're gonna have to put those cuts. We told you, giant, enormous liars. Look, politicians overall are huge liars. I know mainstream media says they're noble people, okay? But Republican politicians almost never tell the truth. And so the progressive proposal, sorry, Anna, would add generations of solvency to Social Security. So you would, for generation after generation, you would never have to worry about Social Security running out. And people would get $200 a month extra in Social Security. My parents on Social Security, they would love $200 more per month. All you have to do is tax everyone instead of having a maximum cap. That's it. It's super easy to solve. The rich just refuse to help.
I do want to go to one more video of Ron Johnson, okay? So let me set it up. So further arguing during Wednesday's hearing that Social Security was not meant to be a general welfare system, Johnson turned to Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy Executive Director Amy Hanauer, who testified that our tax system raises far too little from those with the most, to ask what he called a very simple question. So let's watch. What was that very simple question?
Out of $1 of income that any American makes, how much should be the maximum amount the government takes out in total? What is the total maximum tax rate on $1 of income?
I think we should think about the kind of country we want to have and then have.
I just want a percent. I mean, you've already thought about that. How much do we ought to take out of $1 of income?
You know, we had 400 billionaires who paid less than 8% tax rate, so more than that.
The top 1% pays 40% of all income taxes, okay? I don't know at what point in time is a fair share. It is telling that I can never get a progressive witness to tell me what the maximum percentage is they want to tax $1 of income.
Senator,
and you're not willing to do it.
Senator, when we consider all taxes, the top 1% pays about 24% of taxes.
And they make 22% of income. That's pretty fair.
22% of income. It strikes
They're still
me
paying a
that they
higher
can do
level of
little
tax
bit
than they
more.
get in the income.
It
So we can
strikes
argue with
me
that, but again,
in
I'm
a
just
society
asking.
where the wealthiest are getting more and more of our income, they can afford to chip in more to maintain the systems that enable them to build that wealth in the first place.
And that's what the Republican Party wants to avoid having to be honest about. It's the percentage of income that the wealthiest among us end up paying toward taxes. And when you consider that those earning far less are contributing a much larger percentage of their income to taxes, how can you not get like when you look at the anger in the country, can you not understand where it's stemming from? Right? The system is unstable, right? Or what the system is producing right now, the failures of Congress, the unmitigated greed that you witness, not just among corporate executives, but among members of Congress who themselves are incredibly wealthy. That leads to an unstable society. Okay, the inequality that we're experiencing right now when it comes to both income and wealth is leading to the anger, it's leading to the division, and Ron Johnson wants more of it. He wants to decimate one of the most popular social programs in American history. It's just amazing to me how like they look at the inequality and they're like, we want more. We want more.
Yeah, and they say it brazenly. So look, last thing is that a Democratic senator made the point I was gonna make, which is pretty rare. So way to fight back, Sheldon Whitehouse, Democratic senator from Rhode Island. I told you sometimes he's actually quite a brilliant guy and doesn't make some good points. So that little magic trick that Ron Johnson did, I mean, why don't you tell me how much we should tax a dollar? Tell me a random dollar how much we should tax it. So Whitehouse responded, it would make a very big difference to me in how much we should be taxed on a dollar of income, whether it was the first dollar of income of an individual or their billionth dollar of income. Exactly, it's a magic trick. When I made $24,000 a year, every dollar you taxed me, like literally took food off my table, right? When I was a cable news anchor, it didn't matter at all. I'm being honest with you. It didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
So it makes all the difference. Where is that dollar that's being taxed? The marginal rate, the top marginal rate only goes to the richest people above a certain number. It doesn't apply to you guys. And the rich hate that.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, it's just so we can afford, because we can afford it, you're taking a little bit more from us. Yeah, that's how a fair society works. But they don't want a fair society. They want every advantage for themselves.
So guys, I wanted to give you an accurate number. And so for this year, for the year of 2023, any income above $160,200 is no longer taxed for Social Security, okay? So everything up to about $160,000 is taxed for Social Security. Anything above that amount, not taxed for Social Security.
Not taxing above 160,000 is insane. Look, they get taxed on other things, but we all put into Social Security. We all get it out. It makes us a unified country. It's a rare thing where we're all in it together. And the rich go, yeah, but only up to $160,000. And then they have goons like Ron Johnson, both for his own interest and for his donors' interest, that fight you like hell while pretending they're on your side.
All right, we've got an update on the Clarence ongoing issues with Clarence Thomas and money kind of being fishy in his orbit. So several lawyers who have had business before the Supreme Court, including one who successfully argued to end race-conscious admissions at universities, paid to a top aide to Clarence Thomas, Justice Clarence Thomas, some transactions, some money through Venmo. Now, I wanna just give you this caveat as we continue. I think this story was a little premature. I kind of wish that the journalists reporting this story would wait a little bit and get a little more confirmation and do a little more investigation before putting this out there. Because I do agree that there are problems with some of the relationships, close relationships that Justice Thomas and his wife have with, business interests. I am concerned with, in the very least, the appearance of corruption, the appearance of conflicts of interest, especially when it comes to his relationship with Harlan Crow. But with that said, I think that stories like this, and I'll give you the details in a moment, will start to make it seem like a witch hunt when I don't think that it's a witch hunt. I think that the previous reporting absolutely is important and brings up important questions about our Supreme Court justices and whether they should be allowed to have these kinds of financial transactions, these kinds of trips with wealthy business interests, while they are hearing cases that these business interests certainly have a stake in. Cenk.
So in this story, there is one critical fact that is missing, as far as I know, when I last looked at it, that will make all the difference as to whether this is a BS story or an enormous story.
Right.
So let's give you the story and you'll see.
Okay, so again, this has to do with payments by lawyers to a now former clerk, or aide, I should say, to Justice Thomas by the name of Rajan Vashanit, and so this person served as Thomas's aide from July of 2019 to July of 2021, and the payments were made in connection to a 2019 Christmas party. So the aide's Venmo account, which was public prior to requesting comment for the article and is no longer, showed that he received 7 payments in November and December 2019 from lawyers who previously served as Thomas legal clerks, okay? The amount of the payments is not disclosed, but the purpose of each payment is listed as either Christmas party, Thomas Christmas party, CT Christmas party, or CT Xmas party, in an apparent reference to the justice's initials. Now, despite the description of the payments, it is unclear, it has not been confirmed what the Venmo payments are specifically for, but since every single one of them mentioned Christmas party and they were sent in November and December, I would venture to say they literally have to do with the Christmas party. I don't know if there was a cover charge, that would be strange. But nonetheless, according to his resume, this aide's duties included assisting the justice with the administrative functioning of his chambers, personal correspondence, and his personal and office schedule. So I'll give you a few more details about this. Who were the lawyers who were sending these payments via Venmo? You had a gentleman by the name of Patrick Sawbridge, a partner at Consovoy McCarthy, who recently successfully argued that affirmative action violated the United States Constitution. Also, you have Kate Todd, served as White House Deputy Counsel under Donald Trump at the time of the payment and is now a managing party at Ellis George Cipolloni's law office. And you also had Elbert Lynn, former Solicitor General of West Virginia, who played a key role in a Supreme Court case that limited the Environmental Protection Agency's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. There were others as well, but those 3 really stood out.
Okay, so as I was reading this story, I went through a couple of waves. So first off, they said Christmas party, former clerks, and I was like, they used to work there, they went back for a Christmas party. I'm not sure that's a big deal. Okay, but then I saw they had cases in front of the Supreme Court. Almost like at least 4 of them did, I believe. No, don't even go to Christmas parties and don't send in $25 for the Christmas party. Don't do any of that because it looks like a conflict of interest. It looks really bad. So don't do that. Then I said, wait a minute. well, how many Christmases did they go to? Oh, they went to one Christmas and there were 7 payments. And then I was like, that seems weird. Then I got to the critical fact that's missing, which is how much?
Right.
Because if they went to the party and they said, hey, I'm gonna chip in $35 for the cookies and the schmear or whatever they had at the Christmas party, schmear, eggnog, I don't know. All right, $35, hey, don't do that either. It looks bad, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest, but everybody's gonna survive. It's not that big a deal, right? If instead it turns out it's $35,000 they sent,
right.
7 of them, then we got a different story and a massive corruption scandal, right?
Yeah.
So can someone find out how much they sent in?
That's why I'm saying, like, I just think as the story is right now, with the details we have right now, it was premature. They needed to wait, in my opinion, right?
How did they see who they were, but they couldn't see how much? That's interesting.
You can set on Venmo. You can do complete privacy settings where none of your transactions are open to the public, or you can do settings where no one sees the amount, but they see the transactions between 2 individuals. You get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. And look, authorities should look into it, and they should absolutely determine the amount. Because what if it is $10,000 from all 7 of them, or $100,000? That would be massive corruption. That would be bigger than any of these other stories. But if it's $25, let's move on. Let's move on to the next thing.
Right. Okay, so I have another question for you, and I don't know how I feel about this, but because it's a fact of life, and I don't even know if you can really get around it. So we're talking about lawyers here who clearly had a previous relationship with Justice Thomas. They're friendly. And let's say there's nothing fishy at all with the Venmo payments. We find out that it's $5, $25, not a big deal at all, right? But aside from the financial stuff, the close relationship with lawyers who are going to have, they're gonna argue cases before the Supreme Court, right? Them having that close, cozy relationship, partying during the holidays and stuff.
Party.
That's how I party. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, with the schmears.
But partying with the schmears. Okay, no, but seriously. I mean, that has an influence, right? So like when you talk about a workplace dynamic and like, when the guys, they're hanging out on the weekends, knocking back a few drinks. Like the argument is that might put the female employees in the company at a disadvantage, right? I've heard those arguments before. But I think the stakes are much higher when it comes to the Supreme Court. The stakes are much higher when it comes to the cases the Supreme Court hears. Is there any concern about that cozy relationship, friendly relationship?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So look, there should be reasonable rules. That doesn't mean, hey, somebody clerked for you and they've got cases in front of the federal judiciary at large, you could never see them again. I don't know about that, right? But if they've got cases in front of you, I don't care how close you were. No, of course you can't hang out with them and be like, oh, what do you think how do you think I should rule in your case? Knock down another Bud Light. No, Bud Light. Set it up and shoot it, right? So like, no, you can't do that if they've got cases in front of you. And these guys definitely had cases in front of Clarence Thomas, so they shouldn't even been at the Christmas party, to be honest.
Yeah.
And look, and by the way, that's easy. That's an easy conflict of interest case. You should not do it. The reason we're saying if it's $25, let it go, is not because it isn't wrong. It's just that it's wrong, but minor compared to all the other things that the Supreme Court justices are doing, where they're raking in tons of money.
Okay, final question. I can't help myself. And I know that it's definitely an Armenian cultural thing, because like if I was hosting a holiday party and I like asked, or even if I didn't ask, but I took $25 from people who wanted to pitch in, I know exactly what my parents would say. They'd be like, "Anamot, like what are you doing? Don't do that, right?" Like
don't accept other people's payment, right?
Yeah, you're hosting a party, like don't do that. But I know that's a cultural thing to some extent.
No, I don't think so.
No?
I think like we have Christmas parties here. As people are walking in, give me money. Hey,
There's
okay,
a cover
Edwin,
charge, $25.
Okay, 25, Bart, I need 30 from you. Okay.
No. But so, Justice Thomas, what are you doing? What are you anamot? Okay.
Anamot.
All right. Anyway, all right. With that said, why don't we take a quick break? We've got more for you when we come back, including big tech getting big mad at the Federal Trade Commission. They're going after Lina Khan hardcore, and we'll tell you how and why.
right, back on TYT. A lot of our members have written in with personal experience, both about the strike and Social Security. So let's get started. Wang John wrote in, I'm an independent illustrator and painter. Because I work on commission, I've started making less money with the rise of AI imaging tech. I can't imagine losing everything, including a future career to AI. I'm very happy to see that actors and writers included the problem of AI technology in their demands. And yeah, you really got to give them credit because yes, it definitely affects them, but it affects a lot more industries and they're the tip of the spear in fighting back against it. So the fact that they're also partly fighting on your behalf is great. And remember, a lot of the actors are wealthy and have the firepower to be able to withstand a longer strike. They've got to figure out how to deal with it for the actors that are not making as much money. All right, Bring Back Hostmates writes in, oh, that's funny already. I'm a production assistant in Hollywood, and this is a very difficult day for me. This whole year has been slow with studios and production companies anticipating the writer's strike, but the last couple of months have been particularly brutal. I've been barely scraping by doing 1 to 2 commercials or music videos a month, but now even those will go away. And this in the summer when prices for gas and utilities are at their highest, and when the strikes finally end, no matter what the outcome, the PAs, those are the production assistants, will still not have a union representing us. I absolutely support the writers and the actors, and I'm in favor of the strikes, but I think it's worth noting that there are thousands of people in this industry who won't make it to October. We're bleeding out already.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
That's a great point.
You're absolutely right about that. Look, I can't emphasize enough how much I loved Fran Drescher's speech because, and please watch the entirety of the press conference from today, because she addressed that. And she addressed how difficult it is to make this decision, given how many people are going to be impacted by it, not just the people who are in SAG-AFTRA, but people who are, in the industry, all of the other businesses that help support the industry. It's definitely a valid point. And if you have any suggestions on how our audience can help, right? Please let us know, because I do understand that, and it is going to be difficult moving forward considering the strike.
All right, and Bring Back Hostmates, such a good point. $100 Blue Apron gift card. So that hopefully that helps a little bit. Rewards at tyt.com to claim it. You're obviously already a member. Lost Mama 08 writes in, love you TYT, feeling I found a home. Thank you for saying that, we really appreciate it. Deanne Loso says, my husband and I both have Social Security as our only income. We don't even make $40,000 together, yet we're taking the money from the rich? Ron Johnson needs to STFU, and I think you know what that means. All right, and I'm out of time, she's right. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys, and Progressive B on Twitch gifted us up. We appreciate you. All right, Anna, what's next?
Well, we've got another hearing to talk about. Today, House Republicans on the Judiciary Committee held a hearing to specifically question Lina Khan. She's the chair of the Federal Trade Commission, and they are concerned about her ongoing investigation into Twitter. Now, coincidentally, those same Republicans have received quite a bit of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases, from big tech companies who don't appreciate Lina Khan because she has been far more aggressive than previous FTC chairs in bringing up antitrust cases. And we're gonna talk about that a little more in just a moment. Now, the Judiciary Committee Chairman, Jim Jordan, would have you believe that this hearing is about Khan's so-called obsession with Elon Musk. Let's watch.
Why are you harassing Twitter?
Congressman, thanks for the question. As you might know, the FTC's work on Twitter goes back a decade. Back in 2000,
I'm not talking about a decade, I'm talking about now. 12 demand letters in 10 weeks, over 350 separate requests you've demanded of Twitter. Why are you harassing them?
Twitter has a history of lax security and privacy policies.
You've asked for every single communication relating to Elon Musk, not communications that he just sent to someone or some communications he received, but any time he's mentioned. That actually seems more than harassment. That seems like almost an obsession. Why such an intense focus?
I mean, she was answering your question, and I was actually interested to hear what she had to say, especially when it comes to privacy, security, matters that impact every single user on the platform. But as we know, this is more about theater rather than doing the right thing and allowing for the individual who's sitting there and testifying to answer the goddamn question you're asking her. But anyway, go ahead.
So my favorite part of this story, the best part by far, is all those Republican politicians are like, oh, big tech, man. They're shadow banning conservatives. We got big problems with them, man. Big problems with big tech. Turns out they're all getting bribed by big tech. So what do they do now? They turn around and help them. Oh, you frauds. Let's give you details.
All right, so Sludge wrote about this in detail, and they do a good job specifically focusing on the corruption angle and all of that. We examined the campaign contributions from big tech companies and found that Republicans on the panel have received at least $400,000 from the PACs and employees of Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Microsoft, and that at least 11 of them have received donations directly from the company's lobbyists or executives. Jim Jordan, who repeatedly attacked Lina Khan in recent months, is certainly a recipient of this kind of money. Over the course of his career, Jordan has received at least $76,000 from employees and PACs of the 5 big tech companies, including $38,000 that came from the PAC of Google. Now, in 2018, a man by the name of Adam Kovacev. Do you know how to say this guy's name?
Kovacevic? No, I do not.
Okay,
never mind.
So a guy by the name of Adam Kovacevic, there we go, donated to Jordan. At the time, he was the senior director of Alphabet's lobbying team, okay? So according to the report from Mother Jones, Kovacevic spearheaded efforts at Google to bolster the company's relationships with members of the GOP, including by getting the company to sponsor a reception at the Conservative Political Action Conference in order to court the people who influence conservative lawmakers. Kovacevic has since founded a big tech lobbying group called Chamber of Progress that is funded by Google, Uber, Meta, Apple, and other companies, and that has been lobbying Congress against legislation that would limit the ways big tech companies could use their market power to gain advantages against competitors and consumers. And again, I really want to reiterate, because this is important. The attacks against Lina Khan make a lot of sense when you consider how she has treated her role relative to previous FTC chairs. Okay, we have antitrust laws. Those antitrust laws are incredibly important. And she has actually wanted to, enforce those antitrust laws. The big tech companies do not like that. They like the acquisitions. They like to essentially squash their competition by buying them out. She gets involved and she tries to challenge those acquisitions. I would actually like her to go further. I think that's the right thing to do. In fact, I covered a story just yesterday where I would like to see, the ability for the FTC to halt some of the acquisitions that these private equity firms are making in the healthcare industry. But that's beside the point. It's just a good explanation for why she's been targeted by tech companies and the politicians who are funded by the tech companies.
So listen, I don't necessarily agree with the Democrats on this one, or maybe even Anna in this case. But I should tell you my enormous bias, right? So both Meta and Alphabet are big partners of ours, and so I don't know what would happen if they were broken up. I could name you a couple of dozen industries easily that have a much bigger monopoly than Facebook, Google, etc. I'm just being honest with you with my bias. I don't know if it's my bias or my actual opinion. It's hard for me to even tell, right? But having said that, like if you said to me now, would you break those companies up? I would not, okay? But that, to me, that's not the point here. The point here is the hypocrisy. So all those Republicans who said, oh, big tech is terrible, and they got all of their followers to believe them. I mean, I saw those segments on Fox News. Oh, big tech, it's crushing conservatives. And remember how they were saying they're suppressing Diamond and Silk, right? And they had all of these different conspiracy theories about how awful the big tech was. Now they've all turned around. Now they're not saying they turned around. They're still pretending to be tough on big tech. But meanwhile, they've been bribed. So when a push comes to shove and they're in the hearings, they're like, no, do not touch those big tech companies. Those guys, oh my God, they should get everything they want. Interesting that your reaction to that seems a little different after you took the bribes. Oops, I mean campaign contributions.
Why are you so mean to Elon Musk? Why are you asking him questions? We don't like that.
Yeah, and then let alone the Elon Musk standing over there, right? He's like, now Elon, look at me, I'm doing it in public, Elon. I'm defending you. Money, send me money. And Google and Meta, some money.
Yeah.
Okay, now one guy that I have to point out their hypocrisy even more, and I'm genuinely curious what he's gonna say about this. You remember Matt Gaetz came on our show?
I know, there's a little bit, okay, go ahead.
All right, let me set it up and then you tell me what happened, okay? So Gaetz and us, we fought like crazy. But there's one part that I agree with him on, and I've given him credit a couple of times on the show. He says he does not take corporate PAC money. He's a very, very, very rare Republican who doesn't take corporate PAC money. And I said, look, you could be crazy, but at least you're honest crazy. I could live with it.
No one's paying you to be crazy.
Yeah, exactly, right? Well, I'll read you this portion of the story and then Anna, you give us the color on it.
Right.
Committee member Representative Matt Gaetz has been a partner to congressional Democrats on legislation designed to rein in anti-competitive behaviors of the tech giants. So that's good. He's at least not being that's an interesting stance for him to take, right? But he's still taking money from the industry PACs and lobbyists. Amazon, Alphabet, and Microsoft PACs have each made donations to Gaetz campaigns. So what happened to not taking corporate PAC money?
Okay, so as much as I would love to have an aha moment and say, we caught you, we didn't really catch him here. Okay, so our wonderful producer Taylor double checked this, and while the reporting here is true, there's important context for you to know about. So those companies donated to Matt Gaetz during his initial run for Congress back in 2018. He swore off money from PACs in 2020.
So you know what, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I'm super glad that I didn't know that as we were doing this story, because that part of the production came in later. The reason is, look at that. Now my thesis is, and that's why I set this rule when we founded Just Democrats, that you cannot take corporate PAC money. If you do, it's gonna bias you. Matt Gaetz now no longer takes PAC money, so apparently he is consistent on this. And look at us, we care about facts, and we're fair, interesting. Anyway, after he stops taking corporate PAC money, all of a sudden he joins the Democrats and says, yeah, this is anti-competitive. We should rein in big tech, just like I've been saying. So I disagree with Matt Gaetz and the Democrats on that, but at least Matt Gaetz is being consistent then. And why is he being consistent? Because he's not being bribed anymore.
Yeah, also, even though Matt Gaetz supported regulatory measures against big tech, he did co-sign a letter along with 10 other House Republicans that criticized Khan for going against too many corporate mergers. But look, I mean, the point still stands. If you're signing on to things or if you're pushing for policy out of principle, it's genuinely what you believe. I might disagree with you, but at least I know this is genuinely your perspective. This is what you're genuinely pushing for. When there are financial interests at play, business interests at play, and they're giving tens of thousands of dollars, through super PACs or whatever to your campaigns, then I question whether you actually believe what you're fighting for.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly right. Look, the bribes always win at the end of the day, and you know that, and everyone in America knows that, except for mainstream media reporters who are like, what? Money in politics? I bet that doesn't affect Jim Jordan or any of these other politicians. If you say so, but no one believes you, and that's why you lost all credibility.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we're going to talk about former Fox execs who are now saying, we're so sorry. We're sorry for this. That and more coming up.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like tyt.com/join, and enjoy this. You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey. Hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I referred to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, more news.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how people who used to work at Fox now feel about Fox, and they're issuing a pretty big apology. 3 former Fox executives who worked at the company before Fox News was created, important caveat, have publicly apologized for helping to create the company that would eventually become the home of Fox News. So their letter is titled, "How Our Efforts to Bring Competition to Television Unknowingly Helped Create the Fox Disinformation Machine." It begins as follows. "For what little it may or may not be worth at this point, Preston Patton, Ken Solomon, and Bill Rayner wish to express their deep disappointment for helping to give birth to Fox Broadcasting Company and Fox Television that came to include Fox News Channel, the channel that prominently includes news that, in the words of Sidney Powell's counsel, no reasonable person would believe. So the three executives that were listed there are Bill Rayner, so that's the lead outside counsel for Fox News Corp, Fox, Rupert Murdoch. Then you have Ken Solomon, the executive VP of network distribution for Fox Broadcasting Company, and then Preston Patton's my favorite. I mean, I guess I commend you for apologizing for all of this, but that's the lead Washington lobbyist.
Yeah. Well, actually, he had apologized for it before too, and that apology was really good. So I mean, for a lobbyist, there's some good amends. So he said about Murdoch, and all these guys said, "Look, we believed in Murdoch, and we thought he was doing a service by creating a fourth network before Fox News. Remember, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox Corporation becomes a fourth network, has The Simpsons, etc." And then they start Fox News. And he's like, we all thought we were doing the right thing and we were giving people more options, and they liked Murdoch. And then they realized, oh, this guy had bad intent the whole time. We were wrong. And Patton said he owes himself a better legacy than a news channel that no reasonable person would believe. So repeating that same line from the letter today, and that Fox News had transformed from and so remember, these guys, a lot of them didn't mind in the beginning, from a quote, truthful center-right news network to now, quote, a bile-filled network. Like just filled with bile and venom and poison that they're spreading into the country.
Listen, Fox News was launched in the 1990s. I was too young to care or watch, like I didn't watch cable news when I was a child, right? But I say that because was Fox News ever a truthful, like, okay, they have a right-wing slant, right? But they're at least like dealing with facts. Were they ever that?
No, they weren't. So that's why that's also not true. But it gives you the sense that some of these guys started as like center-right, and they thought they were doing something okay. Remember, they're at Fox Corp, they're not at Fox News, but Fox News is attached to their company, and they're like, okay, but I can live with it, I'm center-right. And then they find out, oh wait, no, this isn't center-right, this is just totally lies and propaganda. So was it that way from the beginning? Yes, because Roger Ailes was there right from the beginning, and Roger Ailes was the original cancer at Fox News. He's a legendary propaganda man for the Republican Party, worked for Richard Nixon, etc. Basically was the architect of stealing the 2000 election for George Bush. And to give you a sense of how they started, back then I was a Republican in '96 when they started. And I remember thinking, oh, a Republican alternative. There isn't any in mainstream media, that's good. And by the way, I was like, they're gonna kill it since there's no other alternative. They're gonna get a ton of viewers. And that unfortunately turned out to be right. But I remember two stories that made me realize, even back then, oh no, these are the bad guys, okay? One was my dad, who was also a Republican back then. I've told this story in members only segments a couple of times, but he calls me and he goes, Cenk, I was listening to Bill O'Reilly, and I think he is full of crap. And I was like, why? I'm like, isn't he on our side? He's like, I don't know. I listen to him. I want to like, but I don't think it's true. He kept saying things that are not true over and over and over again. And my dad, who's a super logical guy, was like, nope. And he was still a Republican. He's like, but I'm not buying this. This is definitely wrong.
Would you say that was the very beginning of his political transformation?
Yeah, maybe my dad's ironically the one guy in the country Fox News flipped over to the left.
No, I disagree. I think that, look, I think honesty is really, really important, right? And so if you start using your news channel or your news show as something that's more interested in pushing an agenda, and while pushing that agenda, you withhold information or you like straight up lie to your audience about the facts of the story, there are gonna be people who are gonna catch on to that. And that is not gonna work in your favor, right? Both in building an audience. I mean, look, Fox News did well with building an audience, unfortunately. But also, like, there are people who are gonna stop trusting you once they realize you're lying, and they're gonna start questioning everything you say and everything that they've trusted you on, right?
Yeah, so now that takes me to my story. The year's 2000 now. I'm still a Republican. I haven't yet voted for Al Gore, but I'm about to. But I don't know that. And I decide, and I'm in Miami. I work in news, and Elian Gonzalez is there at the time, right? And I thought, well, I don't care what the Republicans are saying because I was always independent-minded.
Oh my God!
And
I
was
this story.
And I was socially liberal, right? And so I was like, no, he belongs home with his dad. I mean, I hate that he's gonna go back to Cuba, but his dad asked for him. This is a no-brainer, right? So I go down to Little Havana where they're keeping Elian, right? And with a sign saying, send Elian home. I thought there was counter-protesters.
Insane, I can't believe you did that.
Okay, I thought there was like a section for counter-protesters. There was no counter-protesters. I was the only counter-protester.
It's Miami.
It's Little Havana.
It's Miami.
Okay, like, so what happened was, this is a longer story. Again, I've told it to the members before, and you'd love the longer version. But the bottom line is, I turned the sign around, and I instantly get attacked by a mob of hundreds. Like, I've never experienced anything like that. They ripped my shirt, they kick, punch me, etc. The cops came and rescued me. They lifted me up off my feet. It was super scary. And one guy, and the funniest part of the story is, as they're kicking and punching and trying to, just tear me to shreds, one guy behind me keeps pinching me in the ass. The whole time I'm like both like incredibly frightened and freaked out at the same time. And I keep looking back like, who's this pinching me in the ass?
It's not funny, but it's just so random and weird.
It's so random, it was hilarious. Anyway, cops come and rescue me. And that night, Bill O'Reilly goes on air and goes, and remember at the time I'm a Republican. Yes, a pro-Castro agitator infiltrated the crowd and tried to get them to, et cetera. So I'm like, what? He just made that up. I'm like, I hate Castro. I don't like communism. I'm a Republican. What do you mean pro-Castro agitator? Like, it was an unbelievable lie that he just pulled straight out of his ass. And so I was like, oh, the guys at Fox News are lying about everything.
I'm telling you, man, once you get caught with one lie, and it's a clear lie, it makes some people in the audience question everything you're saying, right? Now look, that's different from making a mistake or having bad information.
Yeah, like if he had gotten a word that, oh, well, we thought it was Cenk, but it was the guy next to him who had actually been a spy for Fidel Castro. Okay, he made a mistake, it was Bob and not me. No, he just made it up. Just totally. So that's why look, if I get into the story of how they stole the 2000 election, we're gonna be here all day. No, Fox News was built on lies. So these guys, I appreciate them. They worked at Fox Corp, but they are so bothered that they had any kind of help to Fox News that their conscience is killing them. And they're like, this is poison. Get it out of the system because it's killing the country.
I do want to give you a few other excerpts of their apology. Although, look, I think it's worth having a discussion about whether they should feel any responsibility for Fox News, right? Because Fox is a giant company. And under that umbrella, there's a ton of content. And I'm not just talking about news content. I'm talking about television shows. I'm talking about movies. Anyway, but let me give you more. They write, in our opinion, the Fox News channel has had many negative impacts on our society. Arguably, the worst has been Fox's role in promoting Trump's big lie about alleged widespread fraud in the 2020 election. And in our opinion, Fox's role in contributing to the January 6th riot at the US Capitol that undermined our democracy. In fact, the connection between Fox and the January 6th attack is so strong that multiple January 6th defendants have pleaded not guilty, arguing they were suffering from Foxitis, a disease caused by watching false news on Fox.
Wow.
Yeah, so look, I agree with them in pointing to the role that Fox News had in inciting anger, rage, and the thought that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. This is the reason why they had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in that settlement in the defamation lawsuit brought by Dominion Voting Systems. But I do want to know, what do you think about them feeling responsibility and this need to apologize for Fox News when they themselves never worked at Fox News? Like, they left before Fox News.
But they did set up the parent corporation. And so, do I think they're guilty? No, I don't think they're guilty. And I know other people that work at Fox Corp even to this day. And look, they got a job to do, and their job doesn't have anything to do with Fox News. Having said that, do I appreciate that they went out of their way to say, look, I don't care how guilty you guys think we are or not. We feel guilty, and we feel terrible that we contributed to any parent corporation that started this poison in the first place. So that makes them really decent people. So thank you for saying that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about minimum wage, because there was a fascinating column in the Washington Post that shares a perspective, let's just put it that way. So a columnist for the Washington Post named Megan McGradle published a piece, an op-ed specifically, kind of raising some issues with raising the minimum wage. Her concern is that raising the minimum wage might actually increase homelessness, which is interesting, all right? Yes. So here's the piece, the title is, Higher Minimum Wages May Increase Homelessness. And in it, she decides to cite a non-peer reviewed study done by someone in San Diego. So here's what she writes in the column, okay? She focuses on a specific part of Los Angeles to make her case that, we've got some high wages here, but a lot of homelessness. At the beginning of July, West Hollywood's wage floor rose to $19.08 an hour, surpassing even Los Angeles and San Francisco. The predictable arguments followed. Employers said they couldn't afford the higher payroll costs and would be forced to cut back on staff. Progressives retorted that thanks to the minimum wage, vulnerable workers are finally able to enjoy a semi-decent standard of living. Now, I just want to interject briefly to note that it is true that some small businesses have difficulty meeting that requirement, right? That is a significant amount of money, right? $19 is not a small amount for a small business that's trying to, grow, trying to stay, to maintain itself. But there are solutions to that, including potential like government subsidies to help uplift these smaller businesses, while clearly the bigger corporations that operate in the state or in the municipality have the means to increase the wages for their workers. But I just wanted to make that point and kind of move on. So let's go to the next part. Supporters of higher minimums can point to studies that seem to show only small effects or even positive effects. Opponents have their own studies showing significant job loss, as well as the common sense observation that when the price of almost anything goes up, people will consume less of it. I won't rehash these arguments any further. Instead, I want to introduce a new argument that higher minimum wages may be contributing to homelessness, a problem that, of course, is particularly bad in California. And then she cites the study that kind of persuaded her to make this point and write this column. So it's a paper that's published by a gentleman by the name of Seth Hill. He's a professor of political science at the University of California, San Diego. And he analyzed cities that raised their minimum wages between 2006 and 2019. The findings of this paper, again, not peer reviewed, I think that's an important part of this story. He found that in these cities, homelessness actually grew by double-digit percentage points, and the effect was larger for cities with bigger minimum wage increases, and it also appeared to get stronger over time. So with this paper in mind, she writes, the columnist here writes that, at first I was doubtful of these findings. For one thing, I already assumed that minimum wage hikes cause significant unemployment, and I tried to bring extra skepticism to research that flatters my opinions. For another, this paper is a preprint, not yet peer reviewed. For a third, homelessness seems to be spiking despite an incredibly tight labor market. I'm glad that she's aware of that. There is an incredibly tight labor market. And finally, I've been convinced by policy analysts who argue that the main driver of homelessness is the refusal of liberal cities to build enough housing. I'm glad she believes that because that is true. Nonetheless, she then says that, after she reads the paper, after she finishes reading the paper, the study seemed pretty solid, Cenk. This is her conclusion. Hill's conclusions are plausibly modest. After all, the vulnerable people who are most likely to end up homeless, those with substance abuse or mental health problems, unstable family situations, and so forth, are probably also the most likely to be let go when employers trim payrolls. So the argument she's making here is, oh no, that makes sense. Companies are obviously going to lay people off or fire people if they have to pay a higher wage. So they'll rely on less workers. That'll increase unemployment. And the people that they will specifically lay off or fire are the most vulnerable, people who probably have issues with drug or substance abuses or whatever. Those people end up on the streets, and that's why we're seeing an increase in homelessness. What do you think about that argument?
So I don't agree, and I think it borders on silly, but there's an important distinction here, which is that when I first saw the headline, I was like, okay, here we go, another lunatic, right? It was some insane thing about how, oh my God, if you just gave the rich more money, there'd be less homelessness, or some insane theory, right? And it turns out, no, she's just a classic conservative. So she references a study, she gives her point of view, she gives facts. So it was a normal argument, okay? So that's, I'm being fair to her, right? So, and it's not impossible the minimum wage could be too high. It could be, like if you put the minimum wage at $100 an hour, then yes, obviously restaurants couldn't hire people to be their waiters and waitresses. But can a minimum wage be too low? Of course, right now, it's way too low. It's $7.25, and at that rate, you can only make $15,000 a year if you worked a whole year and never take a day off, okay? So now the question is, where should the minimum wage be to get to maximum efficiency? Well, if it kept up with productivity, right now it'd be at $24 in that ballpark. It's nowhere near $24. That means they are paying you less for the minimum wage than your productivity merits, which means that they're still making the money, it's just the people at the top are making more money. So even if this argument was correct, and I don't think it is. First, let me tell you why I don't think it's correct. So she says, okay, look, if we increase the minimum wage and that leads to some job losses, first of all the studies have shown that it does not.
In fact, a McDonald's executive admitted as such that they thought, oh no, raising the minimum wage was gonna hurt the business to the point where they were gonna have to lay people off. And then he's like, but that didn't happen at all, actually.
Yeah, and different cities have tried this and states have tried this and they've studied those, and it has shown either no effect or sometimes a positive effect. More jobs rather than less jobs, okay? So that's great. But even if it was true that you got a couple of less jobs and those people were forced to be homeless, but then you're discounting the idea that, wait a minute, a lot more people got a little bit higher wages, which that means some of them or a lot of them can now afford the rent. And they could have been homeless but are not anymore, right? In LA, there's tons of working poor who are homeless because their wages are low, and that's true in a lot of the country. And the wages in LA are not that bad as far as minimum wage compared to the rest of the country. Look, guys, so the giant part that is left out of this whole conversation is, how about all the people getting a raise?
Yes.
So that's 33 million Americans if you applied it to the whole country. Let's take $15 minimum wage as the standard, although Bernie now rightfully says with inflation it should be $17, okay? But let's say $15. It would affect 33 million Americans, and collectively it would give them a $92 billion raise.
Yeah.
That's all the difference in the world.
Okay, I gotta jump in on this, right? Because think about how our economy is supposed to work, right? Supply and demand. Now, if you have people with less disposable income, they're living paycheck to paycheck, they are not able to stimulate the economy with their disposable income. They are unable to buy goods and services, which in theory, right, end up uplifting these companies, uplifting these small businesses. Now, because of the Federal Reserve and its monetary policy, its fiscal policy, and because of these major corporations having the ability to essentially do corporate stock buybacks and artificially inflate the value of the stock market or the shares of their specific stock, the economy is like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Like you look at the valuations for these major corporations and you're like, how are they doing well when most ordinary people don't even have the disposable income necessary to buy these goods and services? So like that's where the disconnect is. So when ordinary workers, when rank and file workers are able to make more money, they're very likely to spend that money and stimulate the economy. That helps businesses, small businesses, big corporations, all across the board, everyone does better. And so like that gets left out of these arguments as well. And then finally, I want to address the homelessness issue, right? Because she seemed to have the right idea in regard to, supply and demand. There is very little supply of housing in Los Angeles, very high demand, and that is, I think, the main driver of homelessness. In addition to, yes, it's a complex issue. There are substance abuse issues, mental health issues. It is way more complex. So anyone who thinks it's one factor, they're incorrect. But the lack of housing is a problem, right? And then you have to consider how the lack of housing leads to higher prices at a time when wages have been stagnant and have been stagnant since the 1970s. So let's take a look at graphic 7. From 1985 to 2020, the national median rent price rose from $359 to $894, a 149% increase. In the same time frame, overall median income grew just 35%. From $84,113.
No, 48.
I'm sorry, $48,113 to $64,994. Okay, so obviously there's a massive disparity there. Let's take a look at this graph. Rent price increases have exceeded income increases by 325% since 1985. So people can't afford the housing. Their wages aren't keeping up with inflation, and on top of that, there is a shortage of housing. So to blame homelessness on increasing the minimum wage seems a little silly to me.
Yeah, for sure. Look, our bar is so low now for right-wingers. The fact that she wasn't crazy made me go, wow, not bad. A person who put together a rational argument. It's totally wrong, but it wasn't a lunatic argument. That's my bar now. Now, having said that, guys, supply and demand, as Anna pointed out there, improved it. And the significant increase in really hard drugs like fentanyl and meth have driven up homelessness so much more than minimum wage increases. Like, first of all, there's barely any minimum wage increases. And wherever they've happened, they have not been proven to drive up homelessness. And all of the effects are minuscule compared to the other two giant effects. So when you're making the argument that maybe it's a tiny percentage increase of homelessness because of this, and that's why we shouldn't have a higher minimum wage, to me, it sounds like you're stretching to make sure that workers don't get more money, and you're pretending to be in favor of the homeless instead of in favor of the giant corporations who don't want those wages to go up because they want to keep the $92 billion for themselves.
Yeah, the framing is, I think, very intentional here. So anyway, all right, we're gonna take a break. Excuse me. When we come back, a hairdresser in Michigan is so worked up against the transgender community that she is willing to destroy her entire business. That and more coming up.
All right, social break here. Let's go to YouTube members. Rhett Barker writes in, Anna, there's so many lies you have changed, including mine. If you're getting down, please remember how you have pulled people like myself out of ignorance. Ex-Republican, ex-independent, proud progressive. Wow, Rhett, thank you for writing in like that. Really appreciate it. I'll tell you, every time I see something like that, I know that one's about Anna, but every time I see something like that about the show or about Anna or me or any of us here, I feel like maybe it was worth it. Maybe like the unreal abuse.
I mean, people like, the person who wrote in, the only thing that makes it worth it at this point, honestly.
So thank you, Rhett. Pam Durgett writes, Trump politicized me and got me to switch from independent to Democrat. David Pakman got me from Instagram to YouTube. Anna's Bible Rent got me to TYT, and now I'm progressive. Love you all. Fact.
It's amazing.
Look at that. How many people are writing in with that? By the way, David Pakman disagrees with the left-wing position on Israel. So he's obviously a right-winger, racist, fascist, et cetera, because no disagreements allowed on any issue. I'm kidding. David Pakman's a good person who happens to disagree with us on one issue slightly. He's still a wonderful progressive. That's how it normally works. Christina Elisa Brown says, I love this look on Anna. My number 3 fave hair. Makeup is pretty. Had forgotten about this hairstyle until I saw Anna with it one day. So now when I do wear a half head, I call it the Anna.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Okay, that is kind of the
half up, half
Anna.
down. You know, it's for the days where I can't make up my mind. You know, so I have it both ways.
Switching people's politics, switching people's hairstyles.
That's what I do.
She moves the furniture. That's what she does. Eyebrows27gmail.com writes in on Twitch about my Elian Gonzalez story. I cannot with this story.
It's so insane.
Samantha GK writes in, oh, Cenk, I love your dad. You know what, Samantha? Me too. He's a great guy. And you're right. He's got a wonderful open mind and a logical guy, and I learned from him. Poodle Hat Dragon says, did Rush Limbaugh ever work at Fox, or did it only seem like he did? The reason it seems like he did, even though he didn't, is because he worked with Roger Ailes, the guy who ran Fox News. Roger Ailes trying to get Rush Limbaugh a TV show, and did get him a TV show before Fox News. It was an epic failure, but at Fox News they did succeed in getting the right wing over there. Yes.
Do you know if your dad? Okay, so that O'Reilly lie, was that on his Fox News television show or on radio?
On TV.
On TV. Okay, we're gonna look for it.
All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and I think Miguel Miquiles, if I'm saying that right. Thank you, we appreciate you for joining. Anna.
All right, well, this story is unfortunate to say the least, so let's talk about it. Christine Geiger, who is not the woman in the photo next to me right now, is the owner of a Michigan hair salon and has declared that she is refusing service to members of the transgender community. In fact, she posted this and then later deleted it on Facebook, writing, quote, if a human identifies as anything other than a man or woman, please seek services at a local pet groomer.
Jesus.
You are not welcome at this salon, period. So I don't know why she's this fired up and angry toward the transgender community, but clearly that's a pretty hateful and terrible thing to write. In her mind, she's just practicing free speech. And I do think that maybe she took the wrong lessons from a recent Supreme Court ruling. We'll get to that in a moment. But you can't just deny service to people because you don't like them and you don't like their identity. In fact, in the state of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer has signed legislation specifically indicating that businesses cannot discriminate against members of the transgender community. Nonetheless, the post attracted so much negative attention that she eventually deleted it on Facebook, and she made the salon's Instagram page private. I'm guessing that there were some negative comments on there in regard to what she had to say. I did find her Instagram page though, which is also set to private, and she's touting her fight against the transgender community. She wrote that she will not cave to BS agendas or the hate that hides behind rainbows and unicorns. Blessed to see the strong ones stepping up and the sheep cowering. Okay, but how does it make you strong to be so offended about the existence of transgender people that you even refuse to provide services for them at your place of business, at your salon. Like, how are they harming you in any way, shape, or form? I don't understand.
Yeah, so this is the problem with the Supreme Court decision where they said, well, creative services are allowed to discriminate and say, hey, my religion or my beliefs say that I should not give you this service. Remember, that case was totally fraudulent in that the lady did not actually have a web design company and she did not have customers asking for her services. They just made it up and the Supreme Court was like, whatever, we just want to rule against these folks and we want to rule in favor of religious fundamentalism. So they took the case and made this decision. And now here we are, and she's a hairdresser and she's going, oh, you know what? Now businesses are allowed to discriminate? I want to discriminate. So I just don't like these people.
But okay, so let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling. And you're absolutely right in that, like, the story was made up in order to get this case in front of the Supreme Court justices, right? But there is a distinction, and I feel like that distinction is left out. And for anyone who thinks, oh, this means I could just be a bigot and I can just discriminate against anyone I want. If I don't want to provide services to people because I don't like their identity, I can go ahead and do it. That's not true. So in that ruling, and my understanding is that you can't deny services to a gay couple. However, it is considered compelled speech if you are expected to do something creative that shows support for an ideology that you do not agree with or for an identity you do not agree with.
So that is factual. That is what the ruling says. Now, having said that, think about how vague that is. What's creative and what's not creative?
Yeah, it's true.
Is cutting hair creative? A lot of people could argue that it's creative. Is baking a cake creative? A lot of people could argue that. But then once you start arguing that, oh, you go, you know what? You said baking a cake was creative, potentially, right? Well, so is cooking food then, by definition. And so now these people have come into my restaurant and I don't like them. Now here we are back in the civil rights days. Now that was based on race, so I don't like these black people coming into my restaurant. I got a creative service called cooking, and so that's it, they're banned from my restaurant. Now I'm not sure they could do it on race here, but they could definitely do it on religion, okay? And they could definitely use their religion and weaponize it against different groups, including the trans community and other parts of the LGBTQ community, and they could say, my religion says to hate you. And hey, I was so creative with that apple pie I made, so now you're banned from my restaurant. And now when anybody walks into a restaurant or any other business, a hairdresser, etc., they're like, okay, what are you? Oh, you're trans, you're banned. No, that's a sick policy, and that is un-American, and we've got a big problem on our hands because this is the beginning. This is nowhere near the end. Tons and tons of right-wingers are gonna start banning people in that community.
Yeah, and I mean, she seems pretty, I mean, even though she has set her accounts to private, she seems pretty defiant and continues to say, like, she really feels like she's fighting something evil here, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, these are people, like, look, I would venture to say that if you have this kind of hatred toward any group, people in that group aren't gonna want your services anyway. But she feels like she's some sort of warrior against a dangerous group of people, when in reality, we're just talking about normal people who are part of the transgender community. Now, if there was something specific done to her, then that's one thing, but nothing has been done to her. You get what I'm saying? She's just thinking about potential customers coming in, looking for services, and having the ability to just straight up tell them, I don't like you, I don't like what you stand for, and so I don't want to provide a haircut or color or anything for you.
So Anna, this is where, I don't know if you and I disagree, but look, so you didn't grow up fundamentalist and I didn't grow up fundamentalist, and I think that we have trouble understanding the fundamentalist mind, and so that's why I'm a little bit harsher to them than I think you are. Because for fundamentalists, they think hatred is okay. They think it's moral. They think the moral thing to do is pick a group of people, and in the past it used to be based on race, but now we move to different categories, and now we're in this category, and they think the moral thing, the thing that God wants me to do to be a decent person is to hate this person. They genuinely believe that.
Yeah, no, but like, okay, look, I don't know if she's fundamentalist. Do you know if she's fundamentalist?
Well,
because
anybody who says this.
There are plenty of people in the country who are not fundamentalists, and they have hate in their hearts toward the transgender community. And what I'm trying to understand is, when we're just talking about people who are living their lives and they have absolutely no impact on your life at all, why hate them? Why have that kind of existence?
Well, so that brings us to the same issue, because at some point that hate has to enter your head, right? So, because you're not born with it, everybody's born basically with a blank slate, and they get taught by their parents, media, and all these different factors that affect you, right? So fundamentalist religion does propaganda, and of all the religions, don't pick on any of the religions, okay? But they almost all of them do propaganda against the LGBTQ community. That's the one thing, unfortunately, they're united on. Remember, not all religious people, fundamentalist religious people, united in their hatred of gays. So they tell people whenever they go to church, mosque, whatever it is, that gay people bad, 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 bad. Now trans people bad, 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 bad. And it gets in their head, oh, the moral thing to do is to hate them. Or it could be propaganda from a non-religious organization like Fox News. So you turn into Fox News or Matt Walsh or whoever, those guys, and they're like, the moral thing to do is hate, 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 and it gets into their heads.
No, that's absolutely true.
And they become fundamentalists politically, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why you're getting this. So, I mean, there is no justifiable reason at all. The reason to bring up the fact that she's not personally affected, it's not like, anyway, I don't even want to get into examples of how they could possibly be personally affected, but it's a hatred born out of not facts, but propaganda that got into their heads.
And fear. So after she had deleted that Facebook post, it's not like she changed her mind or anything. In fact, she doubled down on a different Facebook page. So Geiger doubled down in a post on Sunday, July 9th on the Overheard in Traverse City Facebook group. She said she has no issue with lesbian, gay, or bisexual customers, but said she will not support the TQ plus community, meaning the transgender, queer, and the plus represents other genders, other sexualities and stuff. But why the distinction? Why do you feel that transgender or queer individuals pose some sort of risk or threat to you at all? Anyway, I'm trying to figure it out, but obviously this is not something that we can answer here. We don't know.
I can figure it out. In that case, she's leaning. It sounds like she's a political fundamentalist rather than a religious fundamentalist, because for the religious fundamentalists, a man shall not lie with a man, and they're done with it, right? So they're not going to make that distinction as much. But for political fundamentalists, they've been taught by Fox News, guys, it's bad politics to be against gays, lesbians, and bisexual people. There's too many of them, and they're in our families too. They're in the conservative families.
But so are transgender people.
I know, but there's not enough of them. So that's why, remember, the right wing, guys, when they went to go target the transgender community, did they just pick it out of a hat? No, they go down a ladder of hatred. In the beginning, it started with black people. Oh, black people suck. Oh, they're terrible. Oh, we shouldn't give them rights. And it was called the Southern strategy. The Republican Party actively chose to be racist in that regard. That stopped working after a while because people were like, it's getting pretty ugly. And so that was the genius of the civil rights strategy, et cetera. Martin Luther King, beyond brilliant, that got them away from that. In some degree, they made it more subtle. Fast forward, and in 2004, they go, oh, okay, this racism against black people, Latinos is not working as well. Trump brought it back later. But in 2004, they're like, okay, let's do ballot measures against gay marriage, because now we can discriminate against gay people, and that could still drive hatred. Because our base, their thinking is we drive more people to the voting booth by getting them really angry, right? And really fearful, to your earlier point.
True.
So then, being against gay people stopped working, and around 2013, that's why Biden and Obama all of a sudden were like, oh yeah, gay marriage, yeah. They found the political courage once the number got to about over 50% of the country, near 60% saying yes, we're in favor of gay marriage. Now, they tried this with trans rights, and actually that didn't work in the beginning. You remember how they tried to ban them from the military? Trump tried to do that. And that was kind of a disaster. It didn't help them in the polling. They tried it with bathrooms, tried to ban them. That didn't help either. But they dug and dug and dug, and they got to the thing about sports, et cetera. And that did work. And over 70% of the country says, no, we don't like that. So then they use that to go, trans people bad, 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 bad. Until a hairdresser in Michigan, for no reason, is like, oh, I heard they were bad and evil, and they're corrupting the kids, and whatever excuse Fox News was using. So now I'm banning them from my,
and she further writes, by the way, she further wrote, this stance was taken to ensure that clients have the best experience, and I am admitting that since I am not willing to play the pronoun game or cater to requests outside of what I perceive as normal. But all right, so I mean, imagine being so offended by having to use pronouns that a person would like you to use to respect them, that you, again, hurt your business. Because now, look, now she's getting harassed, okay? Now people are boycotting her salon. And on top of that, some of there's professional fallout. So hair care company Jack Wynn has pulled products from the salon. I'm sure others will follow. It's just stupid. When you're that controlled by your fear and hatred toward a group of people, you end up hurting yourself more than anything. And I wish that she understood that.
Yeah, and lastly on the pronouns. So this woman says, I don't want to play the pronoun game. Now, if somebody in any part of our community walked in and said, I demand that you change your pronouns. And I know we've gotten tons of heat for this, but we would be on her side and say, no, don't mess with her pronouns or whatever she wants to call herself. But what I never understand about right-wingers is, why do they care about your pronouns? Like, what business is it of yours? So somebody walks in and says, hey, hey, can you call me he? For whatever reason. I don't even care, why would I care, right? Yeah. And she's like, no, I hate your pronouns. I don't want to play the pronoun game. Why? Because it bothers you so much to be a decent human being and just call them what they asked to be called. What they asked to be called.
Simple, it's the easiest thing. Anyway.
Yeah, we think it's the easiest thing in the world. You want to be called that? Great, you get called that. You want to be called that? Great, you get called that. But for right-wingers, and now some on the left, but mainly 98% right-wingers, like, no, I will not respect what you want to be called. Okay, but that's weird, and it makes you the bad guy.
All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Joe Biden not being a tough enough guy for Jesse Waters.
All right, back on TYT. Albert Williams writes in the YouTube member section, people who are so brave to spout the hate online, but when they get reasonable or / unreasonable pushback, they delete comments and go private to hide. Stand by your convictions and comments. Well, there are some people who stand by their comments and withstand the charge nonetheless, okay? Because principles matter. Julie Gibbs Churchley says, I grew up Republican, became liberal Democrat in my 20s, and then a progressive in my 30s. At 36, I call myself an independent progressive since 2016. I absolutely love your stories. I love TYT. Julie, thank you for saying that. And by the way, your story is very similar to mine. And you know what the common denominator is? It's not all the different political identities we had. It's the open mind that we had. And that's the key. So Julie, thank you for having that open mind. All right, let's go to Twitch again. Danger Mouse 17 says, 27 months of subbing with Prime. Love my TYT family. Thank you for all you do to deliver honest and accurate news and your commitment to moving this country forward. Lots of heart emojis there. We appreciate you. Shiny 984 says about the Fox guys. Oof, imagine having that on your conscience. Heyoko, well, they must have hated it so much they wrote the letter, so you're right. Heyoko Dragonfly 420 writes in, another month, loving the truth, and they've been with us for 20 months. I love this idea. Airship Right wrote in, every one of Khan's answers should start with the dollar value paid to the GOP rep. $120,000 to Jim Jordan from Microsoft. Thank you for the question.
Oof. Oh my God, that would be amazing.
That would be awesome. You know what, Airship Right? If you're a member, $100 Blue Apron gift card. So rewards at tyt.com if you're a member, and we'll get you that, okay? Brilliant point. I love how smart our audience is. Okay, Wang Jun wrote in our member section, TYT has that effect on people. I was a Jehovah's Witness until a rant by Cenk on the Bible gave me the balls to leave the religion. Wow. God, I love that. All right, thank you, brother. Chaz Reborn says, imagine the amount of energy right-wingers use hating all the things that they do. It has got to be taxing AF. For sure, they ruin their lives with all the hatred that they store up inside of them and then spew out every once in a while. That eats away at you. Winter Scoop says, Cenk's salt and pepper hair has me so jealous. My salt is growing in patches.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate it, okay? I didn't think it was good, but now I'm feeling kind of good about it.
I think it's weird.
You think my hair is weird?
No, just all of this. Let's move on.
Okay, when we're talking about your hair, it's totally fine. Okay, anyway, Art Guy writes, in the first rule of harassing a witness is to talk over them when they start making sense.
Totally.
Exactly. And Boomer Dragon Cat says, was chillaxing while listening to the show, Cenk, but hey, if you're giving out Blue Apron again, time to hit the keyboard. Well, it's true, we are. So if you're a member, great comments gets a $100 Blue Apron gift card. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you, more news.
Unfortunately, we must now discuss Jesse Waters.
Joe's letting every world leader walk all over him. They're all acting like he's not there. They're reaching over his body. They're shoving him out of the way. Hey, there's Zelensky. Let me shake his hand. They should be shaking Biden's hands. We're the ones paying for the war. Nobody wanted to meet Biden at the beach, and now no one really wants to meet him at the summit.
Oh my God. Everything is gonna blow up now. Joe Biden, according to Jesse Waters, was not manly enough as he was meeting with other world leaders, including Volodymyr Zelensky in Lithuania. Now, this was a meeting of NATO leaders at a summit where the Russia-Ukraine war has basically taken center stage for obvious reasons. Now, posing the biggest threat to global security for the alliance in history. And in the eyes of manly man Jesse Waters, Joe Biden was apparently not manly enough. So let's take a look at more of what Jesse Waters had to say, and then we'll discuss.
As the world's leading superpower, our allies look up to us, our enemies fear us. So when our president goes abroad, every other world leader usually lines up to shake his hand. The American president usually dominates every room. When Bush went overseas, he commanded authority. Every leader was trying to get FaceTime. Optics is always important in politics, especially overseas. The world's watching. Trump knew that. 2017, when all the leaders were heading to a photo op, Trump pushed the president of Montenegro out of the way so he could be front and center. Sorry, Montenegro, we got the F-35s. Biden doesn't do that. Looks like a freshman on the first day of school. Joe's letting every world leader walk all over him. They're all acting like he's not there. They're reaching over his body. They're shoving him out of the way. Hey, there's Zelensky. Let me shake his hand. They should be shaking Biden's hands. We're the ones paying for the war. Nobody wanted to meet Biden at the beach, and now no one really wants to meet him at the summit. Everybody already knows, if you want a favor from Joe, you got to go through Hunter.
Okay, all right. I just think this whole narrative is hilarious. It reminds me of the early aughts. Not even the early aughts. It reminds me of like Obama's first term. It's like so dated and so stale. You got to come up with better material here, Jesse. But also, I gotta be honest, there's nothing more hilarious than that footage of Trump who's like, get out of the way. But Jesse, you know that world leaders literally laughed at Trump as he was giving a speech on the world stage.
Yeah, at the UN, yep. They laughed out loud, and then he got frazzled. And he's like, why are you guys laughing? Like,
yeah.
Well, there's a good reason, brother. You just don't know. You're not in on the joke, you are the joke. So, I mean, look, guys, this is Fox News 101, and their audience actually loves it. They're like, yeah, man, if you're a real leader, you show insecurity by pushing people physically.
Look at him.
Because you don't have the, he's such a clown. Guys, how do you not see it? Republicans, how do you not see it? I mean, who does this like?
Look at him.
After he does the push, he's like, okay. You know who does that? A really insecure dude. Okay, You ever see Arnold Schwarzenegger being like pushing people around like in his real life and go like this? No, he doesn't have to because he knows he's already strong. Okay, like that's his insecurity talking right there. But for the Fox News viewer, that's right. You know the right way to do diplomacy? By literally pushing world leaders. I mean, do I have to say that's crazy? But to them, that actually makes sense. Like Biden's so weak, he didn't even assault anyone.
I mean, we're considering giving Ukraine cluster bombs. So is that strong enough for you, Jesse?
We already gave them our jets, etc. Look, guys, look. Let me tell you two other sleight of hands here, because media and politics is filled with tricks and illusions, right?
By the way, I disagree with the cluster bombs. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, to be clear. So number one, and he's like, everybody's trying to shake Zelensky's hand. Nobody's shaking Biden's hand at all. Yeah, they shook it earlier. You just showed like 15 seconds of tape. You think no one shook the hand of the president of the United States? It's such an absurd thing. So they happen to be reaching across Biden to get Zelensky, and they shook his hand earlier. But everyone in the audience probably thinks that's it. Nobody respects us anymore. They won't even shake the president's hand. And you're calling Biden a freshman? He looks like a freshman in college. He's been in Washington for like 70 years, brother. If there's one thing Biden isn't, it's a freshman.
Now, Biden apparently skipped an important NATO dinner, at least important in the mind of Jesse Waters, and he addresses that in this next clip.
Now, last night we reported that Joe skipped a big dinner because he was tuckered out. And now we're finding out this isn't the first time. This is the third time Biden skipped out meeting with world leaders. He ditched meetings in Indonesia and Japan. Now, just because he's there, he has to maintain our international relationships. That's what this is about, relationships. If you go there and don't go to the dinner, then what are you going there for?
You know, to be fair, Trump was really good at maintaining international relationships.
Oh yeah.
Right?
So I actually want to talk about that in this regard. But first, since we're the fairest show in America, I actually agree with him about the dinner. Brother, you went all the way there. The dinner is important. You should show up. I don't know if it's the age thing. I don't know if it's something else. And you never know with the president. It could be an emergency, right? But he has done it a number of times, and it is a real issue for Joe Biden. Now, having said that, what did Trump do at those same events? 2 different times he met with Putin alone. One time they had a translator. After the meeting, apparently what he said was so explosive and horrible, he took the American translator's notes and ripped it up, okay? And said, you're not to tell anyone what we said, okay? Even though they're an official translator, like, of course they're not gonna tell anyone. That's part of their job. Then they would never say it, right? But obviously he was super nervous about what him and Putin decided. Another time, Trump banned the American translator and only used the Russian translator.
Yeah, but also, okay, putting the Russia stuff aside for a second, one of the first things he did was attack our NATO allies. Okay, he attacked Canada, like constantly at war with Canada, constantly at war with like Angela Merkel of Germany at the time. I mean, you got to maintain relationships, Cenk. Very important. Got to maintain, our relationships with other world leaders. Except that's not what Trump did. And like, okay, I guess the critique here about Biden skipping these dinners is valid to some extent, but the whole narrative here is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, Trump brags about how he is against our NATO allies. Marjorie Taylor Greene is now saying, let's just get out of NATO entirely. Matt Gaetz the other day said that we should not allow Ukraine into NATO, but we should allow Russia into NATO. NATO was formed to make sure that we're protected against Russia. I mean, that's just maniacal, right? So yes, they don't give a damn about our allies or maintaining relationships. And yes, they have this weird obsession with the only relationship we should maintain is with the Russians. I don't know why they do. I genuinely don't know why they do it, but it's weird, super weird.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we got an amazing bonus episode, including a disastrous dinner that RFK Jr. had in New York. Oof, that story.
There are farts.
There are farts in the story, there are, we gotta be honest with you. TYT.com/join to get that bonus episode, or hit the join button below on YouTube. We'll see you there in a minute.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapo here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only Black salesperson there. He's the only Black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token Black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today.